Hey there! Welcome to the Distracted Librarians podcast. We're your friendly neighborhood bookworms with a penchant for all things pop culture.
Picture this as our digital campfire, where we dive into our latest obsessions, analyze our favorite distractions, and rediscover the joy of reading.
Whether you're a media enthusiast, a book lover, or just need a break from the daily grind, you've come to the right spot.
So kick back, relax, and get delightfully distracted with us.
Hey everybody! On this episode of the Distracted Librarians, we're going to talk about books from our childhood and nostalgia. I'm Nicole.
I'm Drew.
I'm Killian.
I'm Amanda.
Okay, so why do you think we get nostalgic over books from our childhood?
I think it's just nostalgic over everything from our childhood.
I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
we're librarians, so duh. But
I can't actually say this anymore because I do read a lot in my personal life now, but there was a good 7-8 years where I wasn't reading much over the course of a year. And part of the nostalgia factor for me was just who I was as a reader at that point in my life, and bringing 4 books on a family vacation and finishing them all by the drive up.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think for me personally, learning to read opened up an entire world and even other worlds to me, right? So moving outside of your own personal experience as a child, I think is really important. So in terms of learning about other places and other types of people and other things, was really something that I treasured as a child. So I'm nostalgic about just that feeling of learning about all of the wonderful things that are out there outside of myself.
I totally get that because I've always said a lot of what I learned about history and things like that, I didn't necessarily learn in my history classes in school, but I learned it through historical fiction and then going out and finding okay, what about this was made up for the book and what about this was real and everything in between. And so for me, a lot of it is kind of that connection. When I was a kid, I was much more into historical fiction than I am now.
Okay.
And so a lot of my really big nostalgia things are historical fiction or they're fantasy that I read when I was younger because that was what could completely take me out of the world. Mm-hmm. The way that I could completely fall into a book for a few hours when I was a kid and there was no talking to me. There was no the world did not exist around me. I was in that book.
Cool.
And I think there's a part of me that's going to be chasing that for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Because I can't do that quite as well anymore.
Yeah. Well, and historical fiction is such a great way to learn because it's fun. Mm-hmm. Where reading a textbook, I'm sorry, not fun.
I was also always more interested in everyday person experiences in history and not just the big, major dates that we were taught in history class.
Yeah, totally.
So I feel like there was a lot of freedom as a kid. Mm-hmm. This is maybe not as nostalgic, but that sense that I was transported to a different world. And a lot of children's characters or children's books characters have agency. So I love the Boxcar Children. They're living on their own. That's all you wanted as a kid is to live on your own.
For sure.
And so you sort of get that experience of I'm a kid, I'm told what to do all the time, but for a minute or a couple of hours, I can have my own sense of agency and sort of go somewhere else.
Have an adventure.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like children's books, they kind of carry us through our youth in a way, especially for me personally as somebody who was reading constantly. It was the experiences in the books and the characters and the stories that really kind of made such a huge impact on how I felt about the rest of the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's it would spill over into my real life in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're just the books we read as kids are the books that kind of turn us into who we are.
Yes,
adults.
absolutely.
So,
I mean, and if they don't influence who you are, at the very least, they influence what you end up reading when you're older, I think, in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also, we're holding on to the ones that have withstood the test of time in our own heads. You know, if I read like, I don't know, 400, 500 books as a kid, then now in my mid 30s, only remembering like the more specific details of like 7 or 8 of them, those are the important ones that have really like stuck with me.
Absolutely. There was a reason, a point to those stories that really resonated.
Yeah. So I don't remember a ton of books from my childhood, but the ones that I do, I have a really, really strong attachment to.
Totally. Why should we reread our childhood books, the books that we loved when we were kids?
To connect to your childhood self. It's like so sweet. And it's like, this is who I am, like when I was a little kid. And it's like a sweeter, simpler version, you know?
Yeah. Plus, things just hit differently. And sometimes, well, there have been books that I've read, you know, and I'm so thankful for my children because I get to kind of do this on a regular basis with like bedtime story time. You know, we are always reading to them. And so I've brought some of my favorites into that mix of what we're reading to them. And sometimes things like, you remember them differently. Like it might have meant something very specific to you at the time. And as an adult, it doesn't really translate as well. And other times it translates to something completely new. And I think both are valuable, right? Because it's not for me, it's for my children. But every once in a while, I'll get like a gift from having read that book to my kids too.
Yeah, reading the same book at different times in your life, it's always going to be informed by the experiences you've had. And, you know, as adults in our 30s, 40s, we're going to have much different, we just have more experiences than we did when we were, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there.
Definitely.
And so it is going to feel different. It is going to be different. But we still have that, like, also really comforting memory of what it did mean then.
They're also just still good books. You know,
Totally.
we had taste when we were young. So.
Definitely. Okay, well, let's talk about some of our favorite books from childhood. Who wants to start?
I can. So Boxcar Children for sure.
Okay. Yes.
These children, their siblings, I can't even remember if they run away or they're orphaned, but they live in a boxcar, which is sweet. And they just like find ways to like make house. And it's so charming. Charlotte's Web.
Okay.
Classic. I read it more recently to one of my siblings, and I remember like sobbing. That's a great one to teach children concepts of loss and endings and death.
Charlotte's Web is the first chapter book I ever remember, because my grandma read it to us in chapters when I was like 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's nice.
I have a lot of memories from that. She just passed a few months ago, so
I'm sorry.
that is and it's long story, but it was very important.
And nice you
Yeah.
have that memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also read 5 Children in It. I don't know if anyone has heard of that.
I have not.
It's E. Nesbit. She's British. It's like these almost like Victorian era children who live by the seaside, and some creature finds them on a beach. And to me, it's sort of like the epitome of having your imaginary friend come to life.
Oh, okay.
Super charming. Yeah.
Cute. Nice.
One of the formative ones for me was the Babysitter's Club.
Okay.
I got boxes of Babysitter's Club books from my older cousin. And I don't think those ever got passed down to my other cousin's daughter, because she was the next in line after me. I think they're still in my parents' basement for the most part. Now in plastic waterproof tubs because the basement floods. But I read so many of those books, and I remember the original like movie version of Babysitter's Club, and I think there was an earlier like episodic TV thing. And then when the more recent TV show came out on Netflix, I was obsessed.
Okay.
I've also loved the new graphic novels and everything, but those, I think for me, that group of that group of girls had so many very distinct personalities among them, and there was something about each of them where it was like, I can relate to that, or that's who I want to be more like that. But like, I also really recognize with this one because we're similar in this way. And it was just, they had that autonomy that a lot of kids have in kids' books, but they didn't have as much. They still felt a little more real and a little more grounded in reality. So I really loved those. A lot of the other ones that really stick with me are things that I read in the science fiction fantasy book club at my middle school.
Oh.
I believe that was in 6th or 7th grade. I'm not entirely sure anymore. It's been a minute. But that's where I first read a Redwall book.
Okay.
That's where I got into the Enchanted Forest Chronicles with dealing with dragons. That's where I read my first Tamara Pierce with Song of the Lioness. That's where I read Among the Hidden. And these are the ones that, like, whether I finish the whole series or part of the series or only just that first book, they're the titles that stick with me, and they're the ones that I do reread a lot. Tamara Pierce books and the Enchanted Forest Chronicles are my falling asleep audiobooks. I've listened to those way more times than I could count. Redwall has such a really solid place in my heart because I devoured those books. And at the time, like, those were big books because they were little mass market paperbacks, so they were thick. And we had a whole Redwall feast at book club where we all brought in snacks and we dressed up. It was my first foray into cosplay without having a name for it. And so it's like there's memories that go along with each of those as well as the book itself.
Sure.
And a lot of those are things that I want to reread now. And then, like I said before, the historical fiction. Dear America, American Girl, and The Royal Diaries were staples of my childhood. Elementary school me went through those like no other. American Girl kind of getting passed down from my cousin, but then the other ones kind of finding it myself. So, yeah.
Cool. Very nice.
I've been considering going back to Redwall too, because when I was interested in them, I think there were only 6 books.
We should read them together, Drew.
We should read them together, Killian.
Oh my goodness.
But now there's like 20 or 25 books. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
I said what I said.
Yeah,
There's a lot.
He's done a lot with them.
Yeah.
In the years since I was a youth.
Yes.
But yeah, some of the ones that were really important to me growing up, we talked about Animorphs before. But that was a really interesting series and one that was so much darker than anything else that I'd been reading at that time, in a way that was structured for kids but didn't sugarcoat anything.
Okay.
In a
Those were
really
really
interesting
good.
way.
I would like to know more about why they're dark.
There's a whole war going on.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a lot of like
I have no basis of understanding this series. I remember the show coming out, but I was like older, so it didn't really hit for me.
yeah, there's a lot of like soft body horror.
Oh, okay.
There's a kid who's stuck as a rat for years.
No, a peregrine falcon, I believe.
Peregrine falcon, thank you.
Well, there's
Why
worse
do I
things to be
remember
stuck
that
as.
specific?
Rat is worse.
I mean, a rat
is
would be worse. Yeah.
Rat would be worse. The rat gets eaten by the peregrine
There
falcon.
you go. Now you're in trouble.
Yes. But one of the series that meant a lot to me before was the Seventh Tower series by Garth Nix.
Okay, heard of him. Don't.
Yeah, it's a 6-book series about a kid who it's similar to Golden Compass in that every kid at a certain rite of passage gets a spirit companion.
Okay.
But they transport to another world to acquire one.
Okay.
And when it's Tal's turn to go, his dad turns up missing and they don't have the family sunstone, which is like the way to get to the other world.
Okay.
So he tries to steal one from the like society castle that they all live in. Okay. It's real interesting.
Okay.
There's a whole group of the Ice Carls who are based on the Inuit people. Mm-hmm. And one of the weirdest small things that's always stuck with me is that they, or at least the other main character who joins Tal in his various quests, could fall asleep and set a like internal alarm to wake up after X number of breaths.
Okay.
She like trained herself to only to take a certain number of breaths and then wake up. It was really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that all?
And the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud.
Okay. Yeah.
I got a lot
I can
into.
see the cover right in my brain right now.
This is such a weird like librarian research kid thing, but for this like weird fantasy book, it was the first time I'd ever encountered footnotes.
Oh, okay.
And I was obsessed with it.
I
Yeah.
love a good footnote.
The book is this kid in like alternate Victorian England where they're a magical society or like magical underpinnings to society. And this 12-year-old who's been a magician's assistant successfully summons and binds a demon to him because there's some plot against the magician he apprentices under.
Okay.
I need to read this trilogy again because I'm forgetting pieces of it as I go. But the book is told through the boy's perspective, and then the footnotes are told through the demon's perspective.
Ah, I like
That's a
that.
super cool format.
Yeah. And it just fascinated me. I couldn't even tell you like at this stage of my life if the story of the trilogy was good, but the format of the book is incredible.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I definitely need to return to it and like see.
Awesome. Okay. So my favorite picture book is The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And now I raise moths and butterflies in my house. So I don't know if there was like some kind of leaning there. Must have been.
Point A to point B.
Point A to point B. Yeah, very easily.
Hey, it's an excellent picture book.
It's an excellent picture book. It is beautifully done. Now that I know a lot more about moths and butterflies, there are some problems with the story.
You mean you shouldn't be feeding your caterpillars things like cake?
No, you shouldn't. Also, it says that there's a cocoon, but butterflies have a chrysalis.
Oh.
And then there's another part of me that secretly believes that the caterpillar is actually a moth and that it would be a cocoon because the caterpillar itself looks a lot like caterpillars I've raised before. I don't know. I've got all kinds of weird thoughts and theories about that book, but it's lovely. It's incorrect. Eric Carle, we love you, but, could have done a little better on that.
Come to the podcast and defend yourself.
Yes. Well, he's no longer with us.
Still.
But, yeah, I mean, reading it to my children as an adult, and I'm reading it and I'm going, well, that's not right. What? And then I'm mad about it.
That's awesome.
Anyway, great story. Please, I would never say anything bad about it. It's just slightly incorrect. All right. And then chapter books. My favorite chapter books from childhood. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I was an 80s girl.
Not a single one of us is surprised by this answer.
And you shouldn't be. It is probably definitive into exactly who I've become as a human.
Another point A to point B.
Another point A to point B. Oh, and you're not going to be surprised about the next one either. The Bunnicula series.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love Bunnicula. All of the books are great. I read them to my children. They liked the books, which made me really happy. Because there's nothing more disappointing than reading something you love and then your kids are like, what? Why would we read this? No, they really liked the story and thought it was great. Animals solving a mystery. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with that. And then finally, the Wizard of Oz series, the books. There's lots of books. They're all fun. I enjoy them.
I actually just bought a full set of those because I have read the first one. I love the first one.
Okay.
And I didn't read it, I think, until I was a teenager.
Right. I mean, most people don't know there's more than one.
But I never read any of the others. So
Okay.
After all of my Wicked stuff, I'm like, okay, I want to go back and reread The Wizard of Oz in book form, but also get that full version of the world. Have I gotten to it yet? No, I have not.
You will, and we can talk.
Have I gotten to my other nostalgia reads that I've bought series for and was like, I'm going to read this whole series that I read as a kid? No, I have not. But
You will.
eventually.
You'll get there. Okay. Well, I thought it would be interesting to see what are the favorite books of the world. And so as a librarian, here I go. I found the BBC Top 100 Kids Books and just pulled 5 of them just to see what you guys think of these stories. All right, the first one is Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. What do you guys think?
Love it.
Obviously a classic.
I love that one.
It's a great story.
It is.
I want to go on a wild rumpus. I always wanted to go on a wild rumpus. I didn't even care about the dinner. I was like, no, I'm good. I can do that.
Even as a kid, that's one that the art really stuck with me
Yes.
too. Like Eric Carle art, iconic for my childhood, and I think second only to Eric Carle is Where the Wild Things Are and the artwork of that. I've seen that artwork recreated in other facets of my life. Like every once in a while, Where the Wild Thing Are flags come up in the resale groups, and I'm always like, that would be a really fun show.
It would be a very
I could
fun
buy
show.
those.
Yeah.
And I haven't done it yet, but I feel like that's one of those things that's probably inevitable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Maurice Sendak, his story is really interesting. So,
Is it?
oh my gosh, it is. He had no intention of writing children's books. And so, when he actually started to write children's books, somebody outed him as a gay man. And it became abundantly clear that he was not happy with any of that at all. He went to like a librarian conference and somebody was like shouting at him about him being gay. And I can't remember the exact words, but he was basically like, y'all need to look at your own problems before you start coming at me about mine. And I just appreciate that very much. Also a Jewish man. So he had a lot of stuff going on, but very interesting background for Maurice Sendak. Okay, number 2 is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and that's by Lewis Carroll. Should that hit as number 2? What do you guys think?
I don't know if I read the book.
I don't think I did either.
I have read the book as part of my, I think it was Victorian lit class in undergrad, if that's the right time period. I read it for something in undergrad because I had it as a textbook. And I think I'd read it before then too. I have so many other Alice in Wonderland references
Inspired books.
in my brain and in my past that I don't know that I can separate what is that specific book from all of the things that are based off of it.
Yeah.
That being said, it is source material for so many things, and I think that does get a little bit of respect. Because it is the source material for a lot of really cool books.
It is,
Things.
the language is dated and it can be hard to read because of that. I read it to my kids and I remember being like, this is really hard to read out loud just because, it was written in a different time. The way that things are spoken and said are just completely different, but the story is good. Of course, the movies are good too. Like the animated Alice in Wonderland, the Disney one. I always like that.
The strongest Alice in Wonderland reference in my brain is the Kingdom Hearts level, and I'm realizing this now as I try to think through some of these things. I'm like, okay,
Well, mine
that's
is from
wild.
Mine is from Once Upon a Time. So
Okay, number 3 is Pippi Longstocking by Astrid Lindgren. Are you guys familiar with that one?
Movie, but not the book.
Okay.
Which
No.
is funny though, because it's another reference to something that like became so much bigger than the book.
Yes. Yes,
And
absolutely.
became a cultural icon.
Yeah. I read the book to my kids and they really liked it.
Nice.
Because she's like really silly and kind of off the wall. Who
Yeah.
doesn't love a kid like that?
And it's again that like kid with a lot of agency type of thing where she can kind of do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
And
Which everybody loves.
definitely is going to appeal to kids.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, number 4 is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
love The Little Prince.
Little
I have
Prince
not
is so
read it.
sweet. Oh, are you serious?
I'm serious.
Oh my gosh. Just the illustrations make my heart feel good.
Yeah, very charming.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's very sneakily philosophical in a way that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do
Definitely.
love sneaky philosophy.
That's the name of this episode. Okay. And then finally, number 5 is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien.
I love love it. I love it so much. It's like one of my favorite books. It's
Yeah.
like charming. It's heartwarming.
Yes.
It's like a land you want to go live in for
Oh my
a
gosh,
while.
for sure.
I've read the other three.
Also great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think The Hobbit's more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's less dark.
I didn't read the other three because of The Hobbit.
Oh, really?
So I have not read a single one of them.
Okay.
I could not get through The Hobbit to save my
Okay.
life. Actually, in that same book club where I read all of these other books that I loved,
Yeah.
we read The Hobbit. I did not get through the book. Reading The Hobbit in that book club, the reason one of my best friends fully obsessed with Lord of the Rings all through middle school. She loved that book, then read all of the other books. The movies came out, so into those. I could not get through The Hobbit to save my life. I have tried many times since, and I have tried Fellowship of the Ring, I think, once since, and I have simply determined that I am not meant to know anything other than the movies.
It's a bit meandering. I mean, I read The Hobbit to my kids. We're currently reading The Lord of the Rings. I'll see you all in like 2 years.
Amazing.
And I remember The Hobbit being like, it was fine for my adult brain, but for my kids, they don't really actually need to know like the 45 city names of the Hobbit Shire or whatever. You know, like there's just so many little details that are very cool as a grown person, but like it gets hard to wrap your head around
I think it was
when
pages of dwarves entering the Hobbit hole.
There you
that I
go.
was just like,
Yes.
this is not for me.
Yes. And then sometimes like the history, the world building is so intensely wonderful. It's like if anything you ever wanted to know, but like sometimes you just want to get to the meat of it and like, can I just have the
Yeah.
story, please?
I
But-
do love anything that requires a map in the front. So it's like
I do love a good map.
Yeah.
if I need a map and I can like trace it, I remember tracing things as like a kid and being like, they went here and then they went here and then they went here. And
Sure.
here's the whole world. And,
Yeah. It's very cool.
that really appeals to me.
Tamara Pierce filled the fantasy map needs for me.
There you go.
As a child.
Nice.
Yeah. I liked the idea of The Hobbit and the Silmarillion as like,
Oh gosh,
An
the
index.
Silmarillion. I haven't gotten to that one.
I really only engage with the three main books, but every time there's like a bit of a lore drop in there and I want to know more about it, there's more about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there
You
is.
can always find more.
An
Tolkien.
unbelievable amount more that you could
Yes.
find. Yes.
So I respect it for that, even if it's not something that is a personal touchstone.
Definitely. Okay. Well, if you have any books that you feel particularly nostalgic about, let us know. We would love to hear about those. And until then, we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Distracted Librarians.
Many thanks to BCTV for their support in recording, editing, and releasing this podcast, and to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring closed captioning on every episode.
If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us at distracted@btpl.org.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those screens lighting up. We'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions expressed in the Distracted Librarians podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Bloomfield Township, Bloomfield Township Public Library, Bloomfield Community Television, the Birmingham Area Cable Board, or its producers or production staff.